Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to the Watch Box, and perhaps I should say welcome back. We've been at you every 12 hours or so with Basel coverage for about the last week. Well, this is the beginning of our wrap of Basel week. You're watching Mailbag. I've got your questions about the show. I've got some wrist shots from our viewers, and of course, we're taking live questions about everything Basel, as well as general watch questions. So let's launch right in with a wrist shot. This is a watch you guys haven't seen in a while, but it's a watch that keeps me on time, if not on topic. It is my Grande Memovox, and this was actually the first watch I bought when I joined Watch You On. It was kind of a congratulations after our road show that we did around the country in 2014. Back then, that was a big deal for us. I needed an alarm to keep me awake when we had to take 3:30 a.m. red-eyes out of Chicago and Washington, D.C. And of course, the perpetual calendar makes it a favorite around New Year's. It's getting some wrist time because it is one of my favorites all year long, and frankly, it's just been off my wrist for too many days. I had to reset the perpetual calendar from January, and that is just wrong. This one will sound off a little bit later too, because we've got a Memovox. I've got to give you a sample of the sound. Also remember, thewatchbox.com, if you want to get strapped like me and wear a Jaeger LeCoultre alarm, we have them in stock. Great selections, whether you're going with JLC or not. This is how I shop for watches. Also, check out our app. You can download it on our page. Everything from augmented reality to try our actual watches properly sized on your own wrist to the ability to value your collection or a single watch in your collection in real time using our 2 decades of digital pricing data. All right, live audience poll, guys. I've already posted the link into the chat box. It's in the description field below. But tonight we're doing a this or that based on some affordable Basel steel sports watches. So you're going to choose the Battle of Basel winner, and it is the Tudor Black Bay GMT versus the watch I haven't mentioned yet, incredibly, the Omega Seamaster 300M 25th anniversary. So we have these two watches from, I wouldn't call them natural rivals because you typically think of Omega and Rolex as the rival, but in terms of price point, these line up nicely. So let's start with the Omega Seamaster 300M, the birthday boy. Okay, so Omega Seamaster 300M. Some things new, some things old. 42 millimeters, no longer 41, a little bit better suited to modern tastes, still in stainless steel. The ceramic bezel, if we go back to the photo for a moment, guys, the ceramic bezel that has been on the Seamaster 300s since 2012 now gains a white enamel inlay. So if you actually look at the bezel, and I'm sure at some point we'll get the picture back, you can see that it's no longer a sort of metallic filling. It's actual enamel that is baked into the ceramic, which means it's lustrous, it's glossy, and most importantly, it's enduring. That's one of the qualities of enamel now standard on the watch. Now, the wave dial, you remember it from the Pierce Brosnan era, it used to be a rather faint embossed pattern. You could miss it from certain angles. Now the dials are beautifully rich, deep, and ceramic, which means you can't miss the pattern anymore. No longer printed. They haven't been printed for a while, but you combine that ceramic wave pattern with the applied indices that have been germane to the type since the early 2000s, you get a watch that looks a lot more expensive than its US retail price of $4,750. Mechanically, caliber 8800. Now, this is now a master coaxial, which means it is a master chronometer with SI14 amagnetic hairspring. It's the Maytaz standard, which is COSC+. It has the resistances, the winding efficiency. It has the test of a fully cased-up watch, magnetic resistance, water resistance, shock, and power reserve. All of this in under $5,000. Yes, you can also get the watch on a bracelet, and it's a bit dearer on the bracelet in terms of pricing, but we're going to stick with the basics. On a strap, 300M water resistance, as ever, the helium escape valve. It's a deluxe package for not a lot of money. That said, the Tudor Black Bay GMT has raised the game. You can see our real-time scoring of this poll, guys. I'm going to post it again in the chat box for those of you just joining. I've posted the link so you can vote in our live audience poll. So Tudor Black Bay GMT. Now, the Black Bay is the franchise for Tudor. A sort of what-if watch that combines a bunch of vintage pastiches into a single package. It's no longer a single package. It is an entire range. You could even say it is the entire brand. Everything from chronographs to fixed bezel variants to ladies' versions. But this is the new hotness for this year. Now, of course, the Pepsi Bezel surprised Rolex let Tudor do that the same year the Pepsi GMT came out. You can get it on the strap, which is textile or leather, or on a bracelet. And it's important to note that the watch on the bracelet is $3,900 US. Remember, the Seamaster was $4,750 on a strap. Now, what do you get inside? You get an impressive movement. This is the Tudor caliber MT 5652 70-hour power reserve automatic winding. It is a COSC chronometer, silicon hairspring, anti-magnetic, not amagnetic to the degree of the Omega, but very anti-magnetic. You can see a full balance bridge with a free-sprung index, so it's also shock resistant. Of course, this one is 200 meters water resistant, so again, this might be academic. None of us are going to go down that deep, but in terms of the water resistance rating and reserve capacity, it does go to the Omega on that count. Power reserve, however, goes to the Tudor, as the Omega is a 55-hour reserve. Now, solid case back, you're not going to be able to see it, so that's one area where the Omega does have the advantage, but at $3,600 on these strap options and $3,900 on the rivet-style vintage-inspired bracelet, there's no doubt that you really have to love the Omega to pay the near $1,000 price premium to get on board with it. I probably would. I really love the Omega, and I have an emotional attachment from my old Bond Seamaster. Guys, let's pull up the poll and see where we stand right now. What are you guys voting out in cyberspace? Do you prefer? Oh, okay. You guys are sentimental like me. You would also go with the Omega Seamaster. You know what? I appreciate that. It's derivative of nothing. It's not a junior version of anything else. It's not trying to be the Planet Ocean, whereas I get the feeling that the Black Bay GMT is trying to be the Pepsi Basel GMT Master. So again, Omega, still cutting a rut 25 years later, 25 years young. The Seamaster 300 for now is the winner of our poll. We're going to keep updating that throughout the broadcast. Okay, just remember this. When the broadcast ends, stay with me. Tim_Mosso on Instagram. I update daily. I like to post the haut de gamme, and I like to post video. You know, a video is kind of where I made my name on the internet, so I always try to put some motion pictures on my Instagram account. It's also a great way to contact me, as I always try to respond to the comments made same day on my posts. Finally, comment if you're watching this recorded, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, wrist shots. I asked and you answered. Our viewers out in cyberspace, Bruno O leads off. Okay, from Europe, Bruno O sports his Tissot at home. That is his gorgeous Tissot Couturier at home, and Ryan M follows up, proving that the Rolex Explorer 2 16750 can look dashing in a leather strap. I actually feel that's the best look for that watch. If you don't need to get wet, I don't think it gets any better than that. Good job, Ryan. JPG rolls with high-performance German hardware, watches and wheels with his Alange und Sonne Zeitwerk and his Porsche 911 Turbo. Spectacular stuff. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your watch on this show. All right, viewer mail-in questions. Tonight, it's minute repeaters, Basel favorites, pocket watch love. So let's start with the first question. Euron V asks, Tim, what exactly is a minute repeater? I see this term thrown about. I can't visualize what the complication does. Well, that's okay. You don't have to visualize it, because I'll provide the pictures, and more importantly, it's something that must be heard to appreciate. Now, it would be great if we could do a macro shot, but we're not going to be slaves to the macro camera. This is a watch that doesn't need to be seen to be appreciated. So I'm going to fire up this lovely 2008 Patek Philippe 5078 010. So let's do that one more time from the opposite side so you can see how it works and what it's actually doing. Now, I'm not going to get carried away because I could play with this thing all night. But as you can see, it's a watch that chimes the time. It breaks the hours, the quarters after the hour, and then the minutes after the quarter into chimes. So if you're looking, for instance, at 12:58, it's going to chime 12 single tones, 3 double chimes, because each double chime is a quarter, so 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, that's 12:45, and then it'll chime if it's, let's say, 59 minutes after the final quarter, it will chime 14 additional single chimes. That's what a minute repeater does. Invented in the late 17th century, either by English watchmaker Daniel Quare or in his workshop by his apprentices. It was effectively a way to tell time with your pocket watch before there was artificial lighting or any kind of luminescent material for the dial. And that's what a minute repeater does. The hours, generally the quarters, but sometimes tens of minutes, and then the minutes after the quarters or the tens of minutes. All right, welcome for those of us who are just joining us, just chiming in, I might say. I can see I Am Charlie joining us, Peter K., Hugh Yanis, Simon Holt, Fjord Prefect, and Top Secret Vid. Welcome, guys. Okay, now remember, I'm all about throwing out my talking points. If you got questions about Basel or watches, any watches, chime in and I'll do my best to follow up. So let's reference a question asked by Paul S. that I think is going to cover a lot of ground. Paul S. asks, Tim, can you name your favorite Baselworld pieces at sub 5,000, sub 10,000, sub 20,000, and price no object? All right, here it goes. Now, Baselworld means thousands of watches, so obviously I've missed a bunch of stuff, but I think I can give you a pretty well-rounded viewpoint with respect to highlights at each price point. Now, sub $5,000, the Rado Hyperchrome Ultra Light was the best thing from Rado this year, and Rado is always a standout with one model per year. They always have one knock your socks off watch. Brown ceramic dial. This is the variant there too. I like this one better. It's a little bit more understated. Brown ceramic dial, minimally calibrated, brown ceramic case, and they use a special ceramic blend that is actually a third lighter than their regular ceramic for this watch. 43 millimeters, special ceramic blend, ETA auto with a 64-hour power reserve, automatic winding. The movement has aluminum bridges and plates like an FP Journe Octa Sport. The whole thing only weighs 56 grams. It's 100 meters water resistant. They're only making 500. I think they'll sell them all at list. And for 2,950, that is tough to beat. Although Longines might try. Possible spoiler, I don't have any hard numbers just yet other than the stats. I suspect this is going to be a sub $5,000 watch, at least in one of its variants, but this is the Longines Master Annual Calendar. 40 millimeters in stainless steel. This is an automatic, also with a 64-hour power reserve, a day and a date, and an annual calendar function. So it only needs to be adjusted once a year during the jump from February to March. It's also going to be available on a strap, and if the full bracelet variant doesn't make the sub $5,000 threshold, I fully expect this version with black dial, steel case, and alligator strap to be sub 5,000. This is an awesome watch that could easily take the title from the Rado. This is the kind of pricing you would only get on obscure brand annual calendars pre-owned, only you're getting it from Swatch Group with a real ETA and a full warranty. That is an awesome watch. Longines, tell me, what's the damage for this one? Okay, sub $10,000, two great options. Habring Felix Doppel Chronograph. Now, Habring of Austria, Volkermarkt Austria, the husband and wife team of Habring Squared, always does something interesting. On a yearly basis, they make one gotta-have-it watch, kind of like Rado, but they're only making a few dozen watches total per year. Now, this is a watch with a silver dial or a lethal black dial, and I mean, this thing is JLC Duomet White Gold Limited Edition potent for under 10,000 bucks. 42 millimeters in stainless steel, built to order and customizable. You can see it's a split-second chronograph, manufacturer caliber A11RD, which is designed by virtuoso watchmaker Richard Habring and built within the manufacturer. It's an in-house caliber, and it has an optional pointer date that I would highly recommend. As you can see, the watch is highly customizable. You can choose your strap, you can choose your dial, you can choose your hands. You can even choose whether or not your watch will have a date built in. Some like that functionality, I do. Others would prefer a cleaner dial. Not mine. I will say this, 50 meters water resistant manual wind, 48-hour power reserve with a glorious display case back. You can't really do much better for 7,750 euro to about 8,250 euro. Now that pricing I believe to be with VAT. So in US dollars and outside the Eurozone, I expect this to be quite a bit under $10,000, and based on previous Habring pricing, I think this is going to make our $10,000 or sub $10,000 price bracket. Okay, German-speaking watch rivalry. You saw the new hotness from Austria, and now Glashutte Original, possibly the best-known German based watchmaker, or German-speaking watchmaker, I should say, with the vintage 60s. Now, they've been working on the 60s, nope, not that one, the vintage 60s, which is a collection that came out in 2006 and has gradually been evolved, there it is, to include a number of standout dials made in Glashutte's own Pforzheim dial factory. This is an automatic and the Panorama Datum, so two different versions, both with the same aesthetic. You can see the Panorama date, both based on the caliber 39 automatic, and you really can't go wrong. Stainless steel in each case. The Panorama date, which you can see right here, is 42 millimeters, and the automatic is 39. Each has an epic green dial that I can't overemphasize is made entirely in-house with a combination of erosion, galvanizing, and lacquer. It is sensational. Serious detail right there with the gradient, the texture, the color, and the sheer luminescent sparkle of these dials that somehow manage to retain their underlying metallic luster. Special pieces, and at $7,500 US for the automatic and $9,300 for the Panorama date, this watch is so geo. And again, it's very rare that you can buy a brand icon somewhere near the entry level or the point of entry in terms of pricing. Generally, you have to spend more money to get a brand icon. This is a case where you can buy this watch for $7,500 and you have a quintessential Glashutte Original, manufacturer, case, movement, and dial. Okay, Vulcain Jerusalem Edition 2018. Here's my sub $20,000 pick. This one flew way under the radar. If we can make this one a little bit larger, guys, now we can't. Oh well, trust me here. It's got an enamel dial that is hand-painted. Now, I'm not a particularly spiritual or religious guy, but this is historically, emotionally, romantically evocative. No matter what background you come from, you can find something to love about this dial and the virtuosity of its execution. Also, the fact that it's in a 42mm stainless steel Vulcain Cricket alarm means it appeals on multiple levels. You can see that gorgeous caliber. It's a Cricket caliber V10 manual wind, beats away at a nice stately 18,000 vibrations per hour, because it's literally the old 1960s Cricket manual wind movement brought back to life in the modern era on the exact same tooling. Well, 55 pieces with that hand-painted enamel dial, and the price is quite reasonable at $15,690. Hell yeah, or heaven, whichever you prefer, given the subject matter. Finally, price no object. Where does that leave us? Well, shoot the moon, what do I buy if I have a blank check? I buy a Blancpain, and not one of the 50 Fathoms, no. The Blancpain Villeray Flying Tourbillon Jump Hour Retrograde Minute with Grand Faux enamel dial. Okay, let's break this down. This is the one to buy when you're not pinching pennies and you're not a slave to brand name or model line. So, blowing the rest of the fare out of the water, if this combination of complications and dial came from Patek Philippe, we'd all nod our heads yes, drool, and then get on the wait list. Enamel, Grand Faux enamel with Champlavet to create the subdial. This one is 42mm in rose gold. You can get it in rose gold, and you can actually get the rose gold on a bracelet, which is a bit much for me, or you can get it in platinum. Sign me up for that one. That is my dream watch from Basel 2018. Okay, Jump Hour, check. With retrograde minutes on the same scale, you better believe it. How about a Flying Tourbillon? How about entirely hand-finished and free-sprung with an overcoil? How about either rose gold or white metal with a rich and lustrous Grand Faux enamel dial executed on an 18-karat solid gold dial blank, and a manual wind caliber 260 MR with 39 joules and a 144-hour manual wind power reserve. Yes, 144 hours. This thing will run for 6 days. Now, beaten away at a stately 21,600 vibrations per hour. That just makes it easier to see the balance in the escapement. And this one has a caseback power reserve indicator. And as good as the dial is, the caseback might be better. Okay, rose lathe guilloche on the bridges. If you can make that one a little bit bigger, guys, so the guys can, out in the World Wide Web, get the full benefit. Rose lathe guilloche on the caseback. It's as beautiful from the rear as it is from the front. Mirrored anglage, black polished screws, and that wheel you're looking at is a very subtle spiral-shaped radial power reserve indicator for the power reserve of 144 hours. Now, You get that same glorious case back with 3 ATM water resistance, regardless of which metal you buy, but it'll be unlimited in as much as anything like this can be unlimited, but 20 pieces in platinum, which for me is the absolute heartthrob. Now, there is one other watch that I consider worthy of hyperbole and all of your love this year at Basel, but as it's only a variation on an SIHH watch, it's not my shoot the moon pick over the Blancpain. That is, and I'm going to show it to you right here, the spectacular aged bronze Basel 2018 variant on the FB1R from Chronométrie Fernand Berthoud, Fusée and tourbillon with a patinated bronze case and a 53-hour power reserve with a COSC certificate. It's gorgeous, but a variation does not a new watch make, and therefore it cannot supplant that sublime Blancpain. You know, the Blancpain for me is exactly what is wrong with the secondary watch market, or maybe what's so right, as you'll be able to buy that watch pre-owned on secondary markets for like 50 cents on the dollar in 3 years. Those of us who are not snobs and buy the substance and not the brand name are going to make out like bandits with that one. All right. So I can see right here, Top Secret Vid saying that platinum version, wow. Fluffy Kitten saying turn down the brightness. Is that on my screen or on the show itself? I'm not certain. But if my glossy gleam is radiating, I apologize. I'm Italian. My skin is oily. Otherwise, questions from Bengali Maya saying, Tim, can you elaborate on the Royal Oak R&D2? Sure I can. That was a novelty from SIHH. It was the flagship of Audemars Piguet's offerings, but it's a prototype. It's the world's thinnest automatic perpetual calendar at 6.3 millimeters thick. The whole movement's only 2.89, and since the base caliber is 2.4, that means that the entire perpetual calendar with moon phase is less than a millimeter thick. Now it's in platinum, it's 41 millimeters, it's a full bracelet, and it's a prototype, so you cannot buy it. Otherwise, I would say that thing puts the new Patek Philippe Nautilus perpetual calendar back in the case, and with violence. All right, brightness on the screen. Well, I'm not going to be turning my computer around again, so don't worry about that, guys. All right, so questions and comments coming through. Question on the vintage Seamaster Cosmic on integrated bracelet. What's my opinion? To be perfectly honest, I like the vintage Seamaster. I like the Seamaster on a strap. Although I own my own Bond Seamaster on a bracelet, for me, there's something about a sports watch on a water-resistant strap that is both evocative and emotional, and that is the only way I will own either old sports watches or new ones going forward. I just can't get comfortable with having a full metal jacket around my wrist, so that's kind of where I'm coming from on that front. Okay, now in terms of questions and comments from the field, we have an interesting one because wrist shots, you asked and I answered. Okay, Tyler J makes a fashion statement with his speedy reduced Panda. So he's wearing his Speedmaster automatic Panda style. Interesting choice of wardrobe on the rest of the arm. Now, John C. from Ann Arbor, Michigan is wearing his remarkable Sigma dial Patek Philippe 3940J. If you got really close there, you would see the Sigma dial. Patek Philippe, probably the last major Swiss watchmaker to use the Sigma signature on the dial, indicating either a full gold dial or at least gold hands and indices. Started in the 70s, dead by the late 90s. Patek, always a diehard for old traditions. And finally, Alan drives his Alfa Romeo while wearing a late model Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch. Good taste on both fronts. Stay safe in traffic there. Okay, send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your watches on my screen. Okay, Bob P. asks an interesting question. I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but first I'm going to ask one of our, I'm going to answer one of our questions from live chat. Fraser Lead says, hey Tim, what are your thoughts on the Patek Philippe World Time Minute Repeater, the 5531R? Well, I actually predicted before Basel that we would see a production version of this watch. If you remember, it came out at the July New York City Grand Exhibition. It was a cloisonné enamel dial, New York City skyline, one at dusk, one by day, 5 pieces each and protected by patents. A $500,000 watch. There was no way that even at that price they were recouping their development costs. What happens with that watch is when you set your reference city using the world time ring, the minute repeater actually cues off of that index. So it'll always sound the time in your reference city. This is a world premiere. Expensive? Yeah. Were they able to amortize those costs over 10 units? No way. So I thought that this would be back as an application piece. Sure enough, it is. Regular production, rare. It's not limited it's not limited edition, it's limited production. It's technically part of the rare handcrafts category, so it's considered a métier d'art watch, not a grand complication, although it falls in both categories. Still a $500,000 watch. Do I like it? Yes. Is it too much colored gold for my taste? Yes. I think in platinum or in white gold, this watch is a winner for me personally. There are those for whom nothing is precious metal if it doesn't look like gold. Rose and yellow will deliver. And trust me, this watch at just over 40 millimeters is not overpoweringly huge. It just has too much personality in rose gold for my rather reserved New York sensibility. Okay, so questions coming in. I can see Russell 996, Tim, thoughts on the Patek Philippe 5270p? Yeah, I love it. I did my 5 favorite Patek Philippe's. It's a feature that's up on our channel now, right here on Watchbox Studios. I led off with that watch because it was one of the strongest offerings in a class of 2018 that we will discuss for years to come. That's how strong Patek was this year, and that's how much stronger the 5270p salmon dial was. Now, I have a theory. With the first full gold bracelet 5270 coming out this year in the 5270 1R, and the first platinum 5270 in that salmon dial 5270p, I think we're seeing the end of cycle for that model. It only came out in 2011. I think it's going to have a short run. I think Patek is going to try to rebuild some energy around that watch because it never had the mystique and the aura of the previous 5970, which also had a short run. I think by going out with these two variants, full gold on a bracelet and platinum salmon, Patek is making it the watch it always should have been from the beginning, and I think they're going to go out on the highest of high notes. So I like it. I just don't think it's going to be around for long. Put in your applications now. Okay, Bob P. asking, okay, so I'm having trouble committing to a Grand Seiko. I'm not sure it does it for me. Understood. Not every watch is for every person. I happen to like the brand, but Bob says, my search of Goffberg used options, I found 3 Glashutte Original watches I liked, a square one, a Panamatic, and the one with 2 round subdials. I'm going to take that to be the Senator Observer. And along with a couple of Panerais that are in the same price range, there might even be a Jaeger somewhere in there. Can you please tell me Glashutte Original versus Panerai? Quality, reliability, and maintaining value. I'm trying to avoid buying a stainless steel sub with date, which isn't too much more. By the way, I have German cars. Okay, that's good background. So you like stolid, sensible, but I would say subtly emotional things. German cars always sneak up with their passion and their involvement. Okay, Panerai in-house watches. Let's talk about the PAM 311 right here. 8-day power reserve indicator, mono pusher chronograph, dual time, in-house caliber. What can I say about this? Well, this is haute de gamme watchmaking. It's not artisanally hand finished, but in terms of the complication you're getting for the money, this is not a cheap date, whether it comes to the purchase or the service. It's also visually spectacular front and back, and it rivals watches that cost a lot more from other brands. So here's the thing. This is a completely different breed of Panerai than a Panerai ETA caliber. Now there you can see a gorgeous Unitas 6497 reimagined as a 56-hour power reserve chronometer grade Panerai. This is about as good as it gets in the world of 6497's machine finished. Very accurate, very solid, fun to look at, but not on the same horological level of accomplishment as that PAM 311. It's also going to cost a lot less to service, and I've heard that those Panerai in-house calibers even use their own in-house lubricants, so you're really at the mercy of Richemont if you want to service them. Now here's the thing about resale. For both of these families of Panerai watches, both of these generations, remember, the ETA-powered Panerai is no longer around. It was phased out this year. There are no more ETAs in the catalog. Just remember, you buy pre-owned, the depreciation hit has been taken. Now, the best way to buy and sell a watch, if you want to get in and get out without losing money, buy pre-owned, sell privately. If you want quick cash, you can sell to us, but we're a dealer. We need to resell the watch. We're going to pay a very competitive wholesale price. So in terms of resale, both Geo and Panerai operate by the same rules that govern every other watch you can buy used. Buy used, sell privately, and you won't lose, other than the cost of operation, which is maintenance, straps, and service. Now, Geo, Back to our vintage 60s watch from earlier in the episode. Okay, I'm glad we called this up because you get a good sense of what entry-level Geo looks like. Great dials, handsome cases, and accomplished movements. But the caliber 39 in both of these watches is essentially an entry-level mechanical caliber. It's nicely made. It's about what you'll see from Jaeger-LeCoultre or Zenith or Girard-Perregaux at this price point. So machine finished to be very attractive with a lot of added value on that front, but not haute de gamme watchmaking. Not what I would call high horology. This is what I call luxury horology, and you get what you're paying for. Now, like JLC and Zenith and Girard-Perregaux, there are different steps of finish going right up to the level of the true high horology. And with the caliber 61, which I'm going to use as an example, and I think this is high res, so we can get a little bit bigger here, but the caliber 61 went in the Panerai Retrograde, a chiming countdown flyback chronograph that came out in 2001. It is sensational, and it's as good as anything you will buy from Lange or Patek Philippe or Vacheron. So when buying Panerai and Geo, just know there are different levels of mechanical accomplishment, finish, complication, and yes, service and purchase costs. Ultimately, retained value, buy pre-owned, sell privately. And that's the name of the game. All right. So, questions. Bengali Maya, AP 15400, is that high horology? Yes. That's a watch that requires 5 to 7 hours to finish externally when you include the bracelet, and even more than that when you count the finish of the caliber 3120 AP in-house automatic. So in terms of capabilities, yeah, 50 to 60 hour power reserve, it's about 55 to 60. Free-sprung Gyromax style balance on a full bridge, hand-finished, 22 karat gold engraved winding mass, beautiful finish of the watch in places only your watchmaker will ever see. All of this plus a dial made on a 19th century pantograph machine. Yeah, that's high horology. That's not luxury. That's a handmade watch, and it absolutely qualifies. Now, finally, Ricardo D has a question that I think is going to resonate with a lot of us. First, PY7 question, Tim, please share your thoughts on the Zenith Dayfi Classic 41 closed dial. To be honest, of all the Zenith novelties this year, the 41mm titanium closed blue sunburst dial Dayfi 41 with elite caliber, I want to say 679 on a blue strap, would be the one I'd buy. For $6,300 US, that is a win and a great throwback to the golden era of Zenith design just before the fall in the quartz crisis. Circa early 1970s, A384, A385 vintage case shape with a modern Zenith movement and a to-die-for solid dial. Please, Zenith, more like this. But back to the question from Ricardo D. Tim, why don't pocket watches get any respect? This is a great question. You're looking at a sterling silver Vacheron Constantin Army Corps of Engineers enamel dial pocket watch. So you're talking about a Geneva pocket watch made for the Army Corps of Engineers, real history, an enamel dial, and we have one right now, and we're probably going to price it at under $5,000. So why is this? Well, first, history. The first collectible watches in the 60s, 70s, and 80s at the very beginning of the vintage watch movement were pocket watches. In the 80s, the early 80s, on the auction scene, no one who was serious about watches was buying old wristwatches. You could buy an old Patek Philippe minute repeater from the 50s for low 5 figures back then, and even counting inflation, that was a bargain. Now, IWC briefly during the quartz crisis considered making only quartz professional style wristwatches and then making all their mechanical watches pocket watches for collectors. They came very close to doing this because that was considered to be the only means of survival for mechanical watches on the connoisseur front in the early 80s. Finally, remember, during the 80s, Patek Philippe commemorated their 150th anniversary in 1989 with the caliber 89. And continuing into the modern era, we've continued to see Patek Philippe release incredible watches in the pocket watch format, including at the 2017 New York Grand Exhibition, where you could buy a handmade, enameled, or miniature painted, or marquetry dial pocket watch right off the exhibition floor. So that's history. Patek and a few diehards have retained a small presence. Some collectors, as evidenced by the Henry Graves Grand Complication, which set the all-time record for a watch sold at auction, some collectors still revere special pocket watches, but in general, consider this. You can buy and sell Patek Philippe enamel-dialed 19th century pocket watches all day long for $6,000. And I once saw a Lacoulte Grand Complication perpetual calendar, minute repeater, enamel dial, 18-karat gold chronograph for under $40,000. Now, never mind, Jaeger-LeCoultre doesn't have a wristwatch with all those features, but if you were to buy a wristwatch with all of those functions today, you would be spending the better part of $1 million to buy it used. So why doesn't the pocket watch get love from collectors? It's just a matter of modern tastes, and I think it all comes down to the fact that it's just not visible. It's a watch that no one can see. It's a watch that in many cases you have to buy vintage because the new ones, though still made, are very expensive. So a lot of people don't want the liability of wearing a 100 to 150-year-old watch. I was at a watchmakers convention once in Florida where literally a 17th century fusee from England was being passed around the room. The guy bought it for under $10,000, restored it himself. They're watch nerd watches. They're for people seeking value and real connoisseurs who are willing to dig deep into history. Not just the 50s and 60s, but the 1650s, the 1760s. F.P. Journe respects the pocket watch. Philippe Dufour respects the pocket watch. And I think we as collectors should respect the pocket watch. All of that said, there's just something about the watch you wear that has an emotional pull. The pocket caddy, the pocket jockey, may never have. Guys, thank you so much. Remember, stay with me online when the broadcast ends at Tim_Mosso on Instagram. Download our app on thewatchbox.com. And if you're watching this recorded, stick with us for future coverage. Why not? Subscribe to our channel and see what we've got to offer. Thanks for everyone who joined, everyone who asked, everyone who commented, and everyone who voted. Could we show the final poll? What won in the end? Tudor or was it the Seamaster? Was it Omega or was it Tudor? Seamaster 300 or Tudor Black Bay? The winner and still champion, the Bond watch, the Omega Seamaster 300. I'm Tim, this is the Watchbox, Omega wins, and thanks for logging on.